Vengers in the trees, ash-covered duels, a fight for the very soul of Christmas itself. Welcome back, everybody, to the Colliding Worlds. Previously, I had given a brief overview of the setting as a whole. Today, I will be giving a similar overview of some canon events within the setting's timeline. Though I will be primarily focusing on the major events that several factions have participated in, I will make mention of some smaller events that only involve like 2 or 3 factions. But in the meantime, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, share the video. It helps with the algorithm immensely. Seriously, I need the assist. Now without further ado, on to the video. Our first entry in this grand cycle is the Wars of Ash, the community's very first narrative event, in which several participants competed for the favor of one Al-Shaitan. The prize? A wish. In one single instance, the winner would have their wildest dreams come true. Naturally, many were the participants, and great was the bloodshed. With the most thorough records of this conflict/tournament being the failed expedition of Hezekiah Berkeley, preacher of the Knights of Edison, and the laughably stupid assassination attempt by S1R, leader of the Order of the Broken Mirror. The ultimate victor of this war was the Protectors of the Natural, whose wish was for peace. Quite ironic given the bloodshed it all resulted in. How deliciously ironic. Anyways, moving on. Up next, we have... Let me just check my notes here. Ah, yes. The Call of the Fangmore. Simple was the goal, but great was the decree. The Divine of the Fangwood, also known as the Fangmore, seek the return of their rogue kin, Silex. Many were those who answered the call, for reasons different yet similar. The pursuit of faith and devotion. And like with every other religious undertaking, shit hit the fan immediately, as factions who encountered each other immediately started shooting each other. The first recorded instance being a skirmish between the Order of the Broken Moon, Crusader Werewolves, yes, I'll cover them in a future video, and an expeditionary force of the Exodus Lunar, the former proving victorious. Another engagement took place between the Knights of the Undermire and a Christmas elf militia. Yes, those elves. Unfortunately, it went about as well as you might expect. The elves got their shit kicked in. A tale that would be told quite often during the course of their expedition. Similar conflicts would break out across the ensuing days, until the aforementioned fugitive Silex showed up. Once he was captured by the Exodus Lunar, and subsequently handed over to the Toyori Shogunate forces, things got quite complicated. For the Fangmore was a prison. Not his prison, but meant to contain a malevolent entity. The fog which permeated the forest. But the reason for Silex's rebellion was that said prison was starting to fail. Now Silex knew of an alternate method through which to contain the fog, but the Guardians of the Forest would not have it, and so a schism was formed. Word of this new development would soon reach the court of the Crimson King, or at least the emissary he sent, and the Caroleans under King Charles XII, after Silex was taken from the Toriori Shogunate in a brief but bloody skirmish between the two opposing forces. The subsequent meeting upon the Duchess's moon was, awkward, to say the least. Yes, the two forces that were at each other's throats, just 5 minutes before, were suddenly talking as if they were negotiating allies. Fortunately, it didn't escalate from there outside of a duel that the king won. And so, new alliances and new plans were formed. Unfortunately, things would complicate even further as forces of the Christmas Elf militia would pledge themselves to the fog, their allegiance being made clear in a brutal engagement with the Carolean army. Their leader, Buddy, calling upon his new patron to secure victory. But the war that would soon follow would not go as predicted. For at first, due to an alliance between the Caroleans and the Order of the Broken Moon, the gods of the Fangmore looked to soon be the victorious party. However, the final triumph would go to Silex's rebellion, as in the final moments of battle, King Charles XII, more commonly known as Carolus Rex, would suddenly defect after a short but impactful exchange of words with the man himself. Thus, the multiverse was secured, its safety assured, at the cost of the gods having their power lessened. So really, what did we lose? Anyways, on to our next event. The Siege of the North Pole. Yes, that North Pole. Home of the Christmas Elf Militia. Before you ask, no, the entire militia did not follow Buddy into damnation. And rest assured, Buddy did get a sort of redemption arc at the end. So all's good, they're not evil. Anyways, I'm getting off track. The North Pole's first introduction to the multiverse took place on Christmas Eve, when a sudden rift opened up in the middle of a snowstorm. And out from it came a column of refugees, whose origins remain unknown. But the elves did not care. They saw people who needed help and took them in. Over the next couple weeks, more refugees would come in even quicker, but the elves adapted surprisingly quickly, especially with the help of other factions, who, upon contact, would lend material and training support, turning what was once a simple toy workshop into a veritable and expansive refugee, supply, and military training hub. But as we see now, not all of that contact was benevolent. During the second week of contacts, several raids were attempted against the workshop, though each of them met with minimal to no success. However, each subsequent raid increased in scale and intensity, until word soon reached them that a full-scale invasion was imminent. A call for aid was sent out, and swiftly answered. Military advisors from the Finnish Republic and the Toy Legions, to reinforcements from the Nubian domains, to the Crusader Order of St. Lazarus, to the Walker militias, bands of old veterans, farmers, and factory workers wielding old mechs from World War III. At precisely midnight of the third week and fourth day, the invasion began, heralded by the horns of Rome. In particular, the 3 legions of Teutoburg under Publius Quinctilius Varus. They would hit the Nubian flank of the workshop defenses, pushing into the first line of trenches, but quickly being wiped out. All the while, zealots of the Banana Brigade would hit the Walker militia's flank. Their attack, albeit far more disorganized, would meet with similar disastrous results. These first waves would fill the defenders with great pride and resilience. Until the second waves hit. The Nubian flank hit by forces of the Multiversal Mercenary Guild, and the Walker militia's flank hit by literal demons of the Hungering Abyss. The lines would quickly collapse under the crushing weight of concentrated disciplined fire and vast demonic hordes of Wendigos. But just as all hope had seemed lost, as the gates of the workshop proper were about to be busted in, it was all over. The invaders had been driven back. Though we're still deciphering records on who participated in the counterattack. However, there are 2 things we can confirm in the aftermath. The warlord was in a perfect position to kill the leader of the Crispus Elf militia, but refrained from doing so because it wasn't stated in the contract. And his employers, a mafia-esque money laundering organization known as the GYT, were not too happy about it. Though they would not live long enough to express that frustration properly, as this bungled endeavor would lead to a civil war that would see to the creation of the Interdimensional Monetary Union and the ascension of an individual known as the Chairman. I'll go more into the Civil War on the official IMU video. However, with that segue, I do have a couple smaller scale events to go into. The first being the Long March Home, which took place right as King Charles XII of Sweden was preparing for his Russian campaign during the Great Northern War. But instead of the Russian steppe, he would find himself and his army in a new world entirely, eventually coming into conflict with the Automata of Iron. This would take place over 3 separate worlds before he and his men would be able to return home. Another event we have involves the Finnish Republic, taken from their world right as the Winter War was about to begin. But instead of fighting the Soviet Red Army, they would find themselves having to fight a rendition of hell in the Winter of the Damned, as they held the line along with the locals of the world they found themselves in against the Hellborn Wastelanders. They would emerge victorious, even in spite of a subsequent conflict with the Vehicles of Manslaughter known as the Month of Insanity. And with that, I realize this video is getting a bit long, but I will leave off with this. There will be far more lore in the future, and you, yes, you, can take part in that creation. All you have to do is join us in the Discord. Link is in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.